Here we go. This is Pixar's 22nd film. Pixar's first film without any involvement from John Lasseter following his departure as CEO of Disney Animation Areas. Yet another sighting of Pixar's Pizza Planet truck at the toll bridge scene. The first movie to be released for digital download while still in theaters. Pixar's first original movie since The Good Dinosaur in 2015 and Coco in 2017. For you role-playing fans out there, Jell-O is a staple in D&D as one of the first enemies you run across while adventuring. It's said the cube can be very dangerous if it gets close. It absorbs victims and slowly digests them when they float hopelessly inside.
Now, what's amazing is it's become such a staple in D&D that now anything even remotely D&D related has some gelatinous cube. Like this movie,
really?
Right? Yeah, this movie has one. I just got a game because I'm like I said, I'm going stir crazy. So every now and then at like 2 a.m, I play a lot of solo player games. And one of them is called One Deck Dungeon. And it's basically a dungeon crawl. So it mimics the dungeon style fighting that happens in D&D. And of course it has a gelatinous cube. And I believe it's a trap, not a monster, but typically they're monsters. But it's really hard to beat. Like I almost always lose to it.
I watching the movie, and we'll get to it in the movie, but I love the Jell-O cube. There's something about it, but it looks harmless.
Yes, and that was always the point. And that's the big joke of the gelatinous cube. But anyway, I'm sorry, I cut you off because I just think that's amazing.
The toll booth troll works for Under the Bridge Transportation, a joke on how in fairy tales, trolls wait underneath to prey on those who try to pass. It also says you can pay them in cash or riddle. And then, final trivia. One of Ian's classmates at the beginning and the end of this film is wearing a Monsters University hat. So, in true fashion, we get crossovers all the time. There's always the subtle, quote-unquote, Alfred Hitchcock moments where some part of the Disney franchise is located inside the movie.
Yeah, especially in Pixar. And I'm sure there's more that we're not mentioning, but because there's always a ton.
There is.
So the voice cast real quick. I'll do this part.
Sure.
So Tom Holland is Ian. Chris Pratt is Barley. Julia Louis-Dreyfus is Laurel, who is the mother, who, by the way, even after knowing that, does not sound like Elaine at all. But no. It is. Octavia Spencer is the, right? Is that how you say her name?
Yeah, the Manticore, yeah.
Yeah, is the Manticore. Tracy Ullman is Grecklin. Wilmer
Valderrama.
Wilder
Valderrama
is Gaxton. And yet again, the most famous of all, John Ratzenberger, is the construction worker Fenwick. That's the construction worker's name?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the reason why I put that in is because, Ratzenberger again does what he does best for Disney, and that's putting his voice into almost every movie that he's in.
Yes.
So that's why I said the most famous of all, because he's always in a Disney Pixar movie. What a talented cast. You know what I mean? Like you said, for Julia Louis-Dreyfus, we all know her as Elaine from Seinfeld, but she really does not sound like the Elaine we know.
At all.
Right? At all. Tracy Ullman, a well-known actress in the 80s, had her own show. She was in Robin Hood Men in Tights, and it's, another well-known actress for that one. Wilder, I almost screwed it up.
No, you did. You didn't almost. You added a D.
Wilmer Valderrama, mostly known as Fez for That 70s Show. What a classic, just get on in there kind of voice acting. So, I mean, the list goes on, but this is what I have, as far as voice casting is concerned. And what a talented cast, and what a way to put everybody together. Tom Holland and Chris Pratt, known for the Marvel movies, Guardians of the Galaxy and Spider-Man. but they really do play like brothers, like big brother, little brother. And the script is definitely well done.
Oh, absolutely. So getting into the movie itself, right? We see that the movie opens up to this almost, like you mentioned, the D&D, almost D&D fairy, magical kind of world where they say magic used to exist. And because of technology, basically, we have no use for magic because magic was hard. So people just kind of gave up on it. And they started designing cars and, mechanical objects and computers and all this other stuff. But we find very quickly that the older brother is kind of a quote-unquote nerd. He's into this D&D world, which isn't D&D, it's Quest of Yore is what it's called in the movie. But he's really obsessed with it, and it's, in his opinion, historically accurate. So I guess that's kind of the selling point of the game, because he says it like 12 times in the movie, but I really love the fact that this movie even opens up with this kind of like world building, that because it's obvious that these creatures that are in the world are all things you would see in a game that would be called Quest of Yore. I mean, they're elves, right? And then they have sprites or fairies or whatever you want to call them. And there's a manticore that exists. And so apparently Manticore is in the game. So apparently this world that they gave up on like 20 years ago. I mean, like, they didn't give up on it too long ago. And then you have like the new boyfriend for the mom. He's a one of those half man, half horses, and all this stuff. So all this stuff exists still, but nobody really does any of that magic stuff anymore. They just don't believe in it because it was hard to do and you couldn't figure it out. And Ian is trying to find out about his father because, from what I understand, either the father died just before or just after Ian was born. I'm assuming just before, by the way they talk. They don't explicitly say that, but it seems like it was just before Ian was born, so he never met his father. Now, Barley had met his father and had been alive for a few years, but I assume he was very young when the father passed, because he's not in high school anymore, but he's still pretty young. He's not an old man or anything like that. And I mean, I was 14 when I lost my father. So when we sat down to watch this movie the very first time, back when it first aired on Disney Plus, we watched it that first weekend that it was out. And even my wife looked at me and said, "This might be a really hard movie for you to watch. Like, you might not actually want to watch this. This is going to be a really hard one." And I said, "No, I'll give it a shot. I'll try anything once." And I got to be honest, I cried like a baby. But it's a really good movie, and it's really cool because we see that, like, he is kind of like that weird kind of what like the 80s would consider of a like that nerdy. I was one of them. I played D&D. You know what I mean? Like, you kind of like that. People kind of saw you as like a little bit of an outcast and a little weird and strange. And that's definitely not the case anymore. There's actually a lot more acceptance of playing that game, which is weird. You even have to say there's an acceptance of playing games, but it was definitely looked at differently back then, and he kind of fits that mold perfectly. His brother's kind of embarrassed by him, as we see with the high school scene when he's asking the kids for his birthday party.
The thing I love about this movie, and when you opened up, you said that what was accepted then or what was brought then, of course, gets replaced by technology, which is the same to say for the world that we live in, right? So the Model T Ford has been replaced by the Lamborghini. Real quick before I forget, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. It's ironic you say that because my son actually looked at me in the middle of watching the movie this time today and said, "Well, that's kind of accurate because we've stopped doing a lot of things because of technology." It's so true. And it's great. This right there, when you talk about your son realizing art imitates life, that's what he's realizing. He's realizing that, yes, technology has taken the place of everything. It's so true that what Disney put out, that's the undertone, right? It's the undertone. And the D&D thing to me is almost like when you and your family members, your young enough family members, you go on a mission, right? You go around the block to take a walk, but you make it fun for everybody, right? So this, in a sense, is just like that. Using your imagination and putting it out there, and it's a bush, but it's a gelatinous cube, or it's something so out of the ordinary.
Level 27 tree folk.
Exactly, right? And the oak stick, the magic oak stick or whatever it is that you do, but you make it, and this is what the family does for them, you know, and the brother makes it so it's a fun adventure, you know, for them to do what they do. I believe the way I took it was Barley was like 4 years older.
Something like that, yeah.
4 or 3 than Ian.
Now, in my head, I had him pinned at 5 years, and the reason I had him pinned at 5 years older is because I'm 5 years older than my sister.
Okay.
So I put myself solely in his position. But
yes,
it's not quite accurate because my sister was old enough to remember my father, but for whatever reason, I put myself and Barley in the exact same spot.
Okay. All right. So yeah, so that's how I pinned it. But the world itself, I mean, the graphics, the cinematics and the visuals itself, yet again on point. You know, you mentioned D&D was not acceptable. You know, remember the days when we used to play D&D as a kid? We played them where? We played them in the basement, right? So no one knew. And it was like a closet group of maybe 4 or 5 guys, and you sit, or girls, and you sit there and you play the game, right? And you play for hours on end, and you got the munchies, and you got the chips, and you got the sodas, and you just sit there and play, and you get lost in this, and in this world that you each created. And this is the movie. And again, life imitates art, or art imitates life. This is exactly what it is. They've created this movie all around just an imagining for us to take part in. And you can easily get lost in this movie without realizing what's being said. You can easily get lost in the movie just by the visuals, by these subtle undertones of a D&D player because of what's going on.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
and look at TV now. We have Stranger Things starts off with them being in a D&D game, the very first scene of the show. And then you have how many millions of people have played World of Warcraft, or have played Baldur's Gate, which is a D&D game, by the way, or has played Star Trek Online, or DC Online, or all these games that when I was 9 years old in the 80s, nobody would have thought of playing that. I mean, that's just not what you would have done. I would have played it, but a lot of people I knew wouldn't have. You know, you were either a jock or a nerd or a this or a that. Now, those labels are kind of melding. A lot of people go straight from the baseball field to their computer or PlayStation, and like that didn't happen back then. It didn't happen as commonly back then.
The only reason why it didn't happen as commonly back then is because we didn't have it. When we were kids, that's what we did. We went out. We went outside and played.
I was a kid in the 80s. I was able to play video games.
Right, but I mean, so was I. I mean, you know, I was a kid in the 80s too, but video games were meant for the weekend. You know what I mean?
Right.
So Thursday, Fridays, whatever, when you had ball games, you went out with your friends afterwards, or you hung out on the block, or whatever it is. You did skateboard and whatever it is during the day, and maybe in the afternoon a couple of times, maybe you played a few video games, but that was it. We always wanted to go out and play, right? But we still had our little closet, like we said, we still have a little closet things, you know, play the Nintendo 8-bit, you know, and things like that. But but all the same, I mean, again, art imitates life, and this is one of the reasons why I enjoyed the movie. You know, here's my question. Have you ever named your cars?
Yes, but I've only my very first one that was mine. So the first car I ever got was actually my grandfather's car because he had passed away already. So I had his car. But my second car was a Mitsubishi Eclipse, 97 Mitsubishi Eclipse. And I named that car, but that was the only car I ever named.
I was 19 when I moved to Vegas. So the only car I knew driving was my mom's. So when I came out here, I needed a car. So my father and I, and I didn't have much money at the time. So I had a 1977 beige Volvo, complete with manual windows and a manual sunroof. Now, 1977 Volvos are made of purely steel metal. You would have to actually go at a high rate of speed, or as I later found out, a slow roll into an Isuzu Rodeo spare tire to crunch the front of the vehicle. Okay, so
So
that being
110